Obviously, Joe Biden is outperforming Hillary Clinton's national numbers from this time around, last election cycle. But is that actually the case on a state-by-state basis? In this video, we're going to take a look at the polling in each swing state from the end of August through the first 2 weeks of September back in 2016. As we do so, I will fill out this election map, and then in tomorrow's video, I will do the exact same, but with the 2020 numbers. So hopefully by the end of it, you get a good look at how the two maps compare and whether or not Biden is actually polling better on an electoral college basis at this point in the election cycle. We'll be using Real Clear Politics and hopefully find about 5 or 6 polls for each individual average. And starting in Nevada, if we scroll down here to this Monmouth poll conducted September 13th through 16th, and use all of the polls in between that and this Rasmussen poll conducted from August 22nd to 24th. Donald Trump actually, believe it or not, has a net advantage of 0.16 points across these 6 polls. So he actually led in RCP's polling average in Nevada at this point in 2016, which is quite peculiar given Clinton's eventual 2.4 point win in the state. But that being said, Nevada is typically a very tough state to poll and accurately predict, so it could be that this is just an outlier. But nonetheless, Nevada will tilt Republican on this map. And for Arizona, they don't have quite as many polls as Nevada, so I'm going to have to use all of the polls inside of this NBC poll from September 6th through 8th and down to this CBS and YouGov poll from the first week of August. In an average of these 6 polls, Trump has a net 1.66 point lead, so he actually outperformed this data by quite a bit, and with an end result of plus 3.5. Nevertheless, Arizona will be lean red on this election map, so already things are looking pretty different than a regular 2020 map. And for New Mexico, I'll use the 4 polls conducted in September here, which gives Clinton an average of 7.8 points over Donald Trump. That's pretty close to the final result and makes New Mexico a likely Dem state on this map. Next, we have Colorado, where we have a number of polls conducted in September. So I'm going to start with this Gravis poll from the 3rd week of September and go down to this Magellan poll from the last few days of August. In an average of these 7 polls in between, Hillary Clinton only has a 1.29 point lead, which is pretty dang low compared to her final result of plus 4.9. Nevertheless, Colorado was, if you remember, definitely considered a toss-up for quite some time in 2016, unlike here in 2020, and thus will be tilted Dem on the map. In Texas, with it not being considered all that competitive in 2016, there were relatively few polls conducted as compared to some of the other swing states. But from the 4 polls between this CBS poll conducted at the end of September and down to this same CBS poll from early August, Trump has a 7.5 point lead, which is lower than his end result, and that means that Hillary was overperforming polls at this point in Texas during that cycle before they started to widen in the final month. Could we possibly see this be the case in 2020 as well? We'll have to see, but Texas is likely Republican on this election map. And with that, we have finished the Southwest, and Biden has a 196 to 180 electoral college lead. But moving on to Georgia, it has a lot more polls than I thought they would have, so I will get to use this Quinnipiac poll down to this CBS and YouGov poll. That's a total of 7, and the average across all of them is plus 3.71 for Donald Trump, which is actually lower than his final performance and lower than the RCP average as well, which is similar to Texas. So if anything, this would indicate that Biden is slightly overperforming in polling samples as of right now in these 2 states, and his performances could take a slight hit in the coming month. Nonetheless, Georgia will be lean Republican on this map, which actually splits the 2 candidates completely evenly at 196 electoral votes apiece. And now we have Florida, where we have a ton of polls at our disposal. I'll start up here at this Quinnipiac poll and go all the way down to this Suffolk one here. That is 12 polls, which is basically double what I had for any of the other averages. And across those 12 polls, Clinton has a net average lead of 2.92 points, which notably is higher than Biden's current 538 polling average lead. As we all know, Trump did end up winning in Florida by over a point, and polls started to reflect that pretty late on in October. So once again, if anything, this should be a worrying sign for Biden's campaign. But Florida will lean blue on this election map for September 2016, further adding to the wackiness of all of it. And next is North Carolina, where again we have a lot of polls. I'll start by using this Gravis poll up here from September 23rd and actually finish with another Gravis poll from August 15th through August 17th. That makes 14 polls for this average, which is even more than Florida. And Clinton only has a 0.38 point lead across all of them, which is obviously far lower than Florida, but at the same time, it was also a lot higher than her final result in North Carolina, which was losing to Trump by 3.6 points. Polls were off by quite a bit in North Carolina in general, though, although we did see Trump start to perform better in the last few polls before Election Day. Nevertheless, it will tilt Dem on the map, which pushes Clinton higher than her Election Day total of 232 and up to 240. Virginia is up next, and that's another state with a lot of polls to create an average from, starting with this CBS YouGov poll from September 21st and down to this Hampton University poll from August 24th. That is a total of 8 polls and gives Clinton an average of 6.25 points over Donald Trump, which is slightly higher than her final result of plus 5.4. The final polling average, though, in Virginia actually predicted the results basically perfectly, but ended up being slightly lower than it was in September. Virginia will be tilt blue on the map regardless, pushing Clinton closer and closer to 270. Now we have Pennsylvania, and I'll start with this CNN ORC poll from September 20th and go down to this Monmouth poll from August 26th. That's 11 polls to create the average from, and it gives Clinton a convincing 4.63 point lead. And that should be concerning if you are a Biden supporter, because Hillary Clinton ultimately ended up losing in Pennsylvania by 0.7 points, even after she led in the final average by plus 2.1. It shows you that a lead of 4.5 points is by no means safe, especially as early as September. Pennsylvania, though, will lean blue on the election map, and that has Clinton surpassing the 270 mark as well. Our next state, though, is New Hampshire, where I'll start with this Monmouth poll from September 17th and go down to this CBS YouGov one from August 10th. This is just 5 polls, and Clinton has a very large 6.6 point lead, which is higher than what she led by in Virginia at this point in time. But unlike Virginia, Hillary drastically underperformed those September polls and only ended up winning by 0.3 points. And to be fair, Trump did lead in 4 of the last 7 polls used for the final average in New Hampshire, which gave Clinton a perfectly predicted 0.3 point lead. However, New Hampshire will show up as a high lean Clinton state on the map, despite the wariness of her almost blowing a 7-point lead. As you can probably tell, though, I won't be including the individual competitive districts for Maine, which is its 2nd district, or Nebraska, which is also its 2nd district, in today's or tomorrow's videos, because there isn't enough polling done there. But in Maine's 2 statewide electoral votes, I'll use this Press Herald and University of New Hampshire poll from September 15th and go down to this Gravis poll from August 4th through the 8th. That is a total of 5 polls, and they give Clinton a net average lead of 6 points over Donald Trump, which similarly to New Hampshire, she almost choked away. Ultimately, she only won by 2.9 points in the state, where unlike New Hampshire, the final polling average remained pretty steady in her column. However, that 6-point lead makes Maine statewide a lean blue classification, and now we can get into the thick of the Rust Belt that Trump almost entirely swept. If there's anywhere where polls were really wrong in 2016, it is here. So this should be really interesting to see how Clinton was performing all the way back in September of 2016 and how that compares to Biden's current lead in all of these states. Beginning with Ohio, I'll start at the top with this Gravis poll from September 22nd and use all of the polls going down to CBS News and YouGov from August 17th. That makes 10 in total, which will be included in the following average, and that is a net plus 0.8 point lead for Donald Trump. Not only is this far, far lower than the end result in Ohio, this is also lower than Trump's final polling lead, according to RCP, which means that he started to perform better in polling after September. Tomorrow we'll take a look at how Biden is doing here at this point in time, but I can already tell you that it's not all that great compared to Hillary Clinton. But on the electoral map, Ohio will tilt Republican, and in doing so, that brings Trump above 200 electoral votes to 214. Now we have Michigan, a state that Trump won by only 11,000 votes on Election Day in 2016. Clinton dominated all the way up to Election Day, as you can see, but I will only be using polls from this Detroit News one, conducted on September 27th, and going down to this Suffolk University poll from August 22nd. That's only 7, which is lower than some of the other equally competitive races, but the average does give Clinton a 5.43 point lead, which is about 2 points higher than her final RCP average lead before Election Day. Michigan will end up being lean blue on this election map though, as very similarly to Ohio, Clinton started to lose support in the final weeks before Election Day, and then ultimately underperformed those lower polling numbers even more as well. And our final 3 states happen to be the 3 highest voter turnout states as well: Wisconsin, Minnesota, and Iowa. Disregarding that completely though, let's jump into Wisconsin, where Hillary Clinton led in every single poll conducted. Every single one. Even more significant than that though, it was the only state where the end result was outside the final average margin of error. But starting with this Emerson poll from September 19th and moving down to the Marquette poll from August 4th. Yes, that is only 5 polls, but that's still enough to create an average. And that average is plus 6.4, which is a full point higher than Clinton's Michigan lead during that same time frame. Furthermore, that's almost exactly what her lead was going into election night before you know what happened. So if there's one thing that we can take from that, don't trust anything that's going on in Wisconsin, because nobody has any idea what's going to happen with polling this time around in that state. It will be another lean blue state though on this map, joining its buddies in Michigan and Pennsylvania. And penultimately, Minnesota does not actually have a good 2016 Real Clear Politics page, weirdly enough, so I will have to resort to 538 and start by using this Ipsos poll from September 16th down to another Ipsos poll from August 12th. That makes 12 of them in total though, and Clinton's average lead was 7.42 points, which is 1 point higher than in Wisconsin. And Clinton ultimately managed to hold on to Minnesota by a very low margin, though it almost seems fitting that it's the only one of the upper Rust Belt states, which include Michigan, Wisconsin, and Pennsylvania, to be likely blue and not lean blue on the map. Not that any of this is positive for Clinton or is a good sign for Biden either. What these 4 states do represent though, at least in 2016, was mass polling failure, and that won't bode well for Biden unless he maintains the significant advantage he has as of right now. And finally, the state of Iowa, starting with this Loras poll from September 20th and using all of them down to the Suffolk University poll from August 8th. Trump had a 2.43 point lead across these 7, which is actually pretty close to the final RCP average, but not anywhere near the final results in the state. As always, I like to compare Iowa and Ohio, which shared very similar data leading into this election, and the final results were very close as well. In both cases, Trump outperformed polling by unprecedented levels. But that being said, Iowa will be lean Republican on this election map, which completes it as almost the exact opposite of how the 2016 map actually ended up looking. Hillary Clinton has 316 electoral votes to Donald Trump's 220. But if there was a summary for this video, there is one important inference to make from watching all of this play out as it has, and that is the undeniable fact that at this point in 2016, Hillary Clinton was unanimously favored to win that presidential election. Nobody expected Trump to make the polls closer, much less win on election night in September of 2016. I'll dive a little deeper into this concept and specific states with tomorrow's video when we actually compare Biden's map to this one. But that does it for today's video. I hope you all enjoyed. If you did, please make sure to like the video down below, as well as subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Check out more content on my channel here as well. Thanks so much for watching, and tune in next time. EP out.